We'll start with questions.
I'll make a very quick statement and then I'll invite your questions. This is supposed to be an impeachment investigation, which means it's supposed to be focused on treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors committed by the president or another high-ranking federal official. We've heard no evidence of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors touching Joe Biden today. This investigation is absolutely running on empty. It has been a comedy of errors from the beginning, and Hunter Biden has been very clear that his father was not involved in any way in his businesses, derived no profit from his businesses, and rendered no official favors or benefits to any of his businesses, and no one has laid a glove on any of those statements. So this is essentially where we are. We are poring over lots of emails and texts to try to torture out some meaning that doesn't exist there, but to my mind, Hunter Biden, who is now completely sober and in recovery, is an excellent and lucid witness. He, of course, is a graduate of Georgetown and Yale Law School, and has had very effective answers to the wild innuendo and conspiracy theories that have been leveled against him over the last several months. And I understand why Hunter Biden wanted to be able to testify in public, because I think he would answer all of the questions that the public has based on all this propaganda to everybody's satisfaction. And I understand why our Republican colleagues didn't want him to testify in public. So with that, I don't know if any of the other members had anything that they wanted to add, or we can just open it up to questions.
Mr. Raskin, you mentioned the speakerphone stuff earlier, where another business partner said he put his father on speakerphone 20-some times. What did he have to say about that when Republicans were asking him the first hour?
Well, we've been hearing about these speakerphones in public settings for a long time now, and the suggestion is that when Hunter Biden was a private citizen and Joe Biden was a private citizen, and Hunter Biden was having lunch with friends and his father said hello, or if he got on a speakerphone to say hello, or to extend greetings to someone, that there's something illicit about that. And Hunter Biden explained, I think, to the residents of a lot of people in the room on a bipartisan basis that people do that. People say, hey, Dad, will you say hello to my friends? Mom, will you say hello to, my colleagues who are here dropping in? And that was it. And so it was a matter of some amusement that there was all kind of paranoid suspicion cast upon this practice of putting your mom or your dad on a speakerphone.
Can I have one thing? Let me just add one thing on that.
Yeah.
Just on the speakerphone conversations, Hunter Biden was very clear that they never involved any discussions of business, in part because his dad was never involved in his business and they never discussed it. But you don't actually have to take Hunter Biden's word for that, because Devin Archer said the exact same thing. So what Hunter Biden has said here today is completely consistent with all the other evidence, which is there's no involvement of his father in any of his business dealings, even when his father was not in office, and it would have been perfectly appropriate. And he has gone text by text, email by email, innuendo by innuendo, and completely debunked all of the conspiracy theories that the Republicans have been peddling for the last year.
One more thing. And let me say one more thing on the issue with the phone. I think this is a really important part. Is what's also very clear is, as we remember, President Biden lost his wife. He went through an enormous amount of trauma and tragedy. Bo obviously went through a huge amount of physical pain with his family when he was passing away. And after those incidents, Hunter was also very clear that in those incidents, those moments, he was always going to pick up his father's call anytime his family called. They were a family that had been through so much trauma, like any family. When your parents or your family calls you, you pick up the phone. If you're at dinner, you're with friends, you're at a business meeting. If Joe Biden called his son, he's going to pick the phone up. They always pick the phone up as a family, because especially through the trauma.
Nancy Mace was saying, when she came out here after you guys spoke earlier, that this Hunter Biden was being defiant, dishonest, and since his testimony is in direct conflict with the other witnesses, what would be your response to that?
This thing's over.
A referee would stop the fight if this was a boxing match. A coroner would pronounce this thing dead, and without characterizing the testimony, Hunter leaned in, was not afraid to answer any of the questions. In fact, challenged a number of Republicans about their baseless theories, and they had nothing. It's over. This thing is over. I promise you, despite Comer saying that he's going to have a public hearing from Hunter Biden, we are never going to see Hunter Biden testify publicly because this is embarrassing. They will never bring this public. It's embarrassing. It's over. Time of death, 1:30. It's over.
But can you explain what exactly he said he pled the fifth to any of the questions?
No, there's been no assertion of the Fifth Amendment. No.
Congressman, can you just explain it? Has he addressed exactly what value he added to any of these companies' awards, or what his experience was?
Yeah, and I think that Hunter Biden was pretty assertive about that in answer to the point about our colleague Nancy Mason. He said, look, I'm a graduate of Georgetown. I went to Yale Law School. He has served on multiple corporate boards. He's been involved in lots of business. And he was an expert on corporate governance after having worked in corporate governance on corporate boards. And so he rendered the value that people do. I was amazed that, our colleagues who generally are champions of business exercise such suspicion about him having business deals and being involved in business negotiations. That's what business people do. So, you guys can listen to Hunter Biden and talk to him. He's a very smart and lucid guy who had a terrible struggle with addiction, and he'd be the first one to tell you he did some really stupid things, but he said to us, and I think he's saying to the country, his mistakes are his own, and they should not be laid at the footstep of his father, much less transmuted into high crimes and misdemeanors against the union.
But if he had an addiction, then why sit on some pretty serious boards of pretty serious countries?
Well,
He didn't have it he wasn't on the boards at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I look.
He's talking. Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Because the notion, and that we hear from so many of our colleagues in the Republican Party, is that he was not qualified for any of this. We hear that repeatedly. I urge you to go look at Hunter Biden's resume. I had no idea how many different boards he has served on in serious boards in serious capacities. He was appointed by President Bush to be on the board of Amtrak. He has a long history of doing a lot of board work, corporate governance work. And I actually didn't even know, and I guarantee you my Republican colleagues have no idea what his actual career history, professional history is.
Do you think the transcript should be released?
Yes, absolutely. We want the transcripts released as quickly as possible, and we have every reason to believe that they will be. And then the whole country can check it out and understand what happened.
Could you tell us what the mood in the room is like? Is it cordial?
Well, I think for most of it, it has been very cordial, and Hunter Biden has answered every single question. He's not pled the fifth once. He's answered all of the questions to my satisfaction. He's certainly explained a number of things that have been distorted and ripped out of context over the last several months. I think he may be a little bit frustrated by some of the double standards relating to Jared Kushner and money that has been just openly pocketed by Donald Trump in office. And Jared Kushner, of course, brought back $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. And all of that has been part of the conversation. And he was assertive about that.
And just really
Can I just pile on the Jared Kushner thing? I think is important because there's been so many accusations that Hunter Biden has received money from foreign governments. And I thought one of his most powerful lines was when he made it very clear that none of the business dealings that he ever had were with any government entity. And he pointed out, unlike Jared Kushner, who received $2 billion from the Saudi Arabia government as soon as he left office when he was the point person on Middle East policy. We all noticed, I think, that there were some Republicans nodding their head when Hunter suggested that it would be worth investigating Jared Kushner and his $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. So I urge my Republican colleagues, Chairman Comer, to open up a legitimate public corruption investigation, unlike this sham, on Jared Kushner and his $2 billion from Saudi Arabia.
Hunter himself suggested an investigation into Jared Kushner. Well, hold on one second.
Yeah.
Hunter himself suggested that investigation?
Well, I
don't know. He raised the question. He drew the distinction between what he had done in a business world with independent businessmen versus foreign governments, which he did not do any business with, unlike Jared Kushner.
And it invoked the name at that point.
Yes.
But let me just say something about this, because I said to Chairman Comer at the very beginning of his tenure as chairman, I said, if you want us to do a serious investigation into the problem of influence peddling as it relates to foreign government, let's do it. And we can do it in a nonpartisan way where we can look at all of the real problems. And they didn't take us up on that. We ended up releasing our own report, which I recommend highly to you, called White House for Sale, about nearly $8 million in foreign government emoluments that were pocketed by Donald Trump and that we have documented receipts for during the course of his administration. And then, of course, there is the case of Jared Kushner, who set up a company the day after the Trump administration ended and then proceeded to collect $2 billion, $25 million a year approximately in management fees from the Saudi National Fund. And remember that the board of directors, the board of advisors of the Saudi National Fund said, no, don't do it. He doesn't have any experience. He's not qualified. And they were overruled by Mohammed bin Salman himself. And remember, there were all kinds of favors that were extended to Mohammed bin Salman, including the cover-up of his assassination by dismemberment, drawing and quartering of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist. So if we want to look at the serious problem of foreign government influence in Washington, let's do it. We've been saying that from the very beginning, but we are off on a wild goose chase on a complete tangent at this point, and nobody in the room can even identify what the alleged high crime and misdemeanor is. And so I think that the mention of Jared Kushner today did have a resonant effect, certainly on members on our side of the table, and I think also on the other side of the table, as Mr. Goldman said, a number of people were nodding and saying, essentially it looked like they agreed that that's a serious issue if we want to look at the problem of foreign government penetration in the political culture of Washington.
Can we just make a comment on Mitch McConnell stepping down today? This is someone who's reached across the aisle to get things done. Are you concerned about the future? Any comments on leadership? Yes, sorry, you were inside.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
He announced today that he's stepping down as chief.
Let's see. You've got to give me some time to gather my thoughts on that. I have a lot of feelings about Mitch McConnell from the second impeachment trial because I felt that he was appalled by what Donald Trump had done. He knew the truth about what Donald Trump had done, and yet he couldn't bring himself to vote to convict along with 7 other Republican colleagues who joined all the Democrats. He got up and he made a speech where he said that Donald Trump was actually and morally culpable for everything that had taken place, but the Senate lacked jurisdiction to try someone who had left office. That was a legal question that we had dealt with on the very first day of the trial, and we dismissed that legal claim. So he went back to a legal question that had already been settled, and that's why I feel like the 57 to 43 vote, although it was a majority, we didn't hit the 2/3 constitutional threshold, that constituted a massive case of jury nullification because they went back to a question of law that we had already settled. So I was disappointed there with Mitch McConnell, but I understand he's been in a tough situation with Donald Trump taking over his party, and I think he's tried to do what he can, but he didn't show the ultimate courage, which would have been to vote to convict and to find enough other senators so that we wouldn't be back in this nightmare again with Donald Trump.
Congressman Raskin, can you talk about is it majority, what's the time frame? Are you guys taking breaks between who gets asked questions?
Yeah, we're doing hour-long turns. When we had our first turn, I think we took about 15 or 20 minutes. There's really not much of any investigative value here anymore.
I do think one thing that nobody has asked yet is, after all morning and now a big chunk of the afternoon, has there been any new evidence unveiled? And the answer is no. So we're just sitting there rehashing, rehearing the stuff y'all have already reported, debunked conspiracy theories, no evidence, more and more references back to witnesses that have already been put in jail or indicted by the FBI. So I think that's a really core thing here. I'm from Texas, and we say that folks sometimes can be all hat and no cattle. That really describes the Republicans right now in that room. They're all talk, but there has been nothing new revealed. So everybody's been waiting for this big day. And it's a nothing burger. It should have been over the second we stepped in, and they basically said there was nothing new. So we're just wasting our time. Your question should be, how much more time are we going to waste today? And that's really up to the Republican majority.
Thank you, guys. We're going to get back.